Some words are so small you would almost miss them if they did not land in the middle of an old wound. That afternoon, the sun was still high over the yard, the dust on the path was warm, and Tuna was washing vegetables by the outdoor basin while Henry played near the porch in his little sandals. It should have been an ordinary hour, but from the moment the stranger stopped outside their gate and asked Alex a careful question about Tuna's past, the whole house seemed to lose one quiet layer of peace. Then Henry ran across the yard, reached for Alex without hesitation, and called him Dad. It was tender, it was natural, and it was heard by the wrong man. In one breath, Tuna felt comfort and fear together, because sometimes a child says out loud what the adults have only been carrying in silence, and once that truth is spoken in the open air, you cannot push it back inside. Hello everyone, I hope you're having a peaceful day. Today I want to tell you a quiet family story about love, fear, and the kind of truth a child can reveal without even knowing it. Inside were copies of land records, boundary notes, old names neither of them trusted fully, and a hand-drawn marker showing the narrow strip beside their fence. Enough to matter, not enough to conclude anything. This is where many families lose strength. They let fear rush ahead of facts. They either dismiss a warning because it hurts, or they surrender to it because it scares them. Alex did neither. He spread the papers flat on the table. As the sun fell lower, the side yard looked different to Tuna. Not ruined, just more fragile than it had that morning. She stood at the fence and imagined all the years a family can spend building peace on land they never think to question. For a moment, fear came back hard. Not only fear of property, but fear of the past reaching forward and touching Henry. Alex came beside her carrying the repaired cartwheel in one hand. "He said it naturally," she whispered. Alex knew she did not mean the wheel. He looked toward the porch, where Henry had fallen half asleep against a folded towel, one hand still on the cart. "Children don't force that kind of word," he said. That nearly broke her. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was simple. Care had already done its work. Henry had named what daily life had taught him, and maybe that was the deepest ache in the whole afternoon. Love had quietly settled into their home so fully that they had not even stopped to name it aloud. It took the wrong listener to make them hear what had already become true. By evening, the porch light was on. The yard had cooled. The fence still stood where it stood. The papers were tied back up and placed high on the shelf, not ignored, not worshipped. Not the question waiting somewhere ahead about what Henry would one day be told, but something had become clearer. A child's innocent word can expose a wound. It can also reveal a home. And that afternoon, in a yard that went still for one dangerous second, what stood firm was not blood, not paperwork, not old claims spoken through a half-open gate. It was daily love, already rooted deep enough for a child to trust it without fear. Tuna sat across from him, tired but steady now. Ba Tang, before leaving, promised to return the next morning and walk the boundary with them in daylight. One step, then the next. Check the fence posts, compare the old papers to the current line, ask the commune office for records. Talk to the right people, not the loud ones. Keep Henry away from adult confusion. Do not let one visitor rewrite the meaning of the house. Tomorrow would be for measuring, asking, checking, deciding. Tonight was for holding the peace they still had. Tuna carried Henry inside. Alex checked the gate twice, then once more by habit. In the kitchen, the smell of warm porridge still lingered. Outside, crickets had begun their small, patient music. Nothing was fully resolved. Not the land, not the past, not the stranger's knowledge. So Alex picked up Henry and sat with him on the porch for a minute, asking about the cart, the stones, the important business of being small. Tuna went to the kitchen and finally made the porridge she had stopped preparing. The kettle was reheated. The bowl was set out. Ordinary motions returned one by one, like birds coming back after a loud sound. Only after Henry was fed and calm did Alex open the envelope. Then he stepped back from the gate and left as quietly as he had come. No threat, no scene, only dust lifting under his shoes as he disappeared down the path. But the yard did not become normal again immediately. That is the part people rarely talk about. After a tense visit, the real work begins. Not panic, not wild guessing. First, restore the child's peace. Then restore the house. Then examine the problem. A child should not be made to carry the unfinished grief of grown people just to satisfy an outsider's timing. Alex answered in the same even voice he had used from the beginning. He knows who cares for him every day. That was all. Not defensive, not aggressive, just true. And the truth, when spoken plainly, often has more weight than explanation. The stranger studied Alex for a long second, as if measuring what kind of man could say so little and still close a door. Then finally, he placed the envelope on the gatepost. "These are copies," he said. "Old land papers. The strip beside your fence may not be as simple as you think." He looked once more toward Tuna, and whatever old knowledge he carried remained in his eyes, not his mouth. They ask what can be challenged, what can be used, where the house is strongest, where it is soft. Tuna felt ashamed for being afraid of a single visitor. Then she felt ashamed for that shame. Alex seemed to sense both without asking. He reached for the coil of rope by the gatepost and began winding it slowly around his hand, giving the conversation an ordinary shape, as if this were nothing more than a practical interruption in a working day. It reminds everyone that isolation is fragile and belonging is practical. Batang greeted them all, sensed the tension, and did not ask foolish questions. He stood by the porch, chatted with Henry about the broken cart now fixed, and stayed exactly long enough to become a witness without becoming a spectacle. The stranger seemed to understand that his time was narrowing. He reached into a worn folder and pulled out a thick envelope. The boy was now sitting cross-legged on the porch, pushing the cart back and forth, fully at peace, trusting the adults to hold whatever tension he had accidentally opened. The man asked quietly, "Does the boy know the whole truth yet?" No one answered at once, because there are questions that are not really questions. They are probes. They test not only knowledge, but weakness. They ask whether a child's peace is built on lies, whether a household can be shaken by one sentence, whether old wounds still own the room. Tuna's throat tightened, not because she did not love Henry enough to tell him hard truths one day, but because children do not need every adult truth before they have secure ground beneath their feet. There is a difference between honesty and burden. That too helped. When emotions run high, the hands need simple work. Hold the basket, wash the greens, tighten the latch, pour water, fix the wheel. Small tasks keep fear from becoming theater. So while the stranger spoke, Alex repaired Henry's cartwheel with a bent nail and a strip of cloth. He did not stop listening. He just refused to let the stranger control the rhythm of the yard. A little later, Batang appeared on the path with a bundle of greens under one arm. He had only meant to drop them off, but his arrival changed the balance immediately. Not because he challenged anyone, just because a home feels less exposed when it is seen by another pair of familiar eyes. Community matters long before emergencies. A known footstep on the path can do what pride never can. The paper inside was old, copied many times, edges softened, names and lines fading into that gray tone documents get when they have passed through too many hands and too little honesty. He held the envelope for a moment but did not release it yet. Then he looked at Henry again. Just a tightening around the eyes, a quiet calculation. A man who had arrived expecting one shape of the story and had suddenly been shown another. He looked at Alex differently after that, then at Tu Na, then at Henry. No one rushed to explain. That was another wise thing. In tense moments, many people make the same mistake. They speak too much because silence feels dangerous. They fill the air with explanations, corrections, nervous laughter. If there was an old matter, it needed proper checking, not rumors at a gate. The stranger nodded, but his eyes kept returning to the fence. Here is the difficult truth inside many homes. What children reveal with love, adults must protect with wisdom. Henry saying "Dad" did not create the family. It revealed the family already formed by repeated care. But once such truth is visible, outsiders begin measuring it too. No one had stood over him and instructed his heart. He had simply grown into the safety he lived inside. He had named the person who tied his sandals, checked the gate at night, carried him when he was sleepy, and always listened when he pointed at the moon as if it were new. But right behind that warmth came fear. Because the stranger heard it too, and his expression changed at once. It was not loud, not dramatic. Even where Tu Na kept the wash basin and where the kitchen window opened toward the yard, it is a strange feeling when someone looks at your home not as a guest, but as a map. Alex shifted slightly, not enough to provoke, just enough to interrupt the man's line of sight toward Henry. It was such a small movement, no one could accuse it of meaning anything. But Tu Na saw it, and because she saw it, some of the fear inside her settled into something more useful. This is what protection often looks like in real life. Not big speeches, not threats. A body placed in the right spot, a gate kept half closed, a conversation held where the child cannot hear every word. Calm is not the absence of fear. Sometimes calm is the shape discipline gives to fear. The stranger asked about people Tu Na had not seen in years, about whether anyone had come looking before, about whether she still remembered a dispute connected to a narrow piece of land from long ago. Land. There it was. Not family, not memory, not concern. Land. Specifically the strip running beside their fence, a piece so ordinary most days that only Alex really studied it. He was the kind of man who noticed where rain pooled, where roots pushed under posts, where boundaries looked solid until papers said otherwise. He had been planning to reinforce that side before the wet season anyway. Tu Na answered carefully that she knew only fragments. The wooden house had been repaired, the garden expanded, the fence shifted slightly over time by previous hands. She had never claimed more than what they used openly. He looked down at Henry and rested a hand lightly on the boy's shoulder, as if this happened every day, as if nothing in the world could be more natural. That steadiness mattered. Children watch faces faster than adults think. If love is real, they feel it. If shame enters the room, they feel that too. Tu Na felt the warmth first. It came quickly, almost painfully, because no one had taught Henry to perform that word. But too many words can hand your piece to the wrong person. Alex did not do that. He bent slightly, took Henry's little cart from where it had tipped in the dust, and turned the wheel once in his hand. "Go wait on the porch," he told Henry gently. "I'll fix it in a minute." Henry nodded, satisfied, because children often only need one steady answer to believe the world is still safe. He padded back toward the porch, dragging the cart behind him, humming to himself. The stranger watched him all the way there, and that was when Alex noticed something else. The man was not only listening to their words, he was studying the house, the porch light, the gate hinge, the side fence, the strip of ground beside it, the path Henry used when he ran from the porch to Alex. He stood by the gate and waited, one hand resting on the old wood as if he did not want to seem rude. Alex looked up first. He had that habit. Even while working, he noticed movement before sound. When he saw the man, he set the bamboo down and walked over without hurry. The stranger looked travel-worn, not dangerous in the obvious sense, but careful in a way that made the air narrower. His shirt was clean but creased. His shoes carried road dust. His eyes moved once to the porch, once to Henry, then back to Alex. "Is Tu Na here?" he asked. It was not the question itself that changed the feeling of the yard. It was the way he asked it, like someone testing an old door to see if it was still locked. Alex did not open the gate at once. He kept one hand on the latch and answered in the same calm tone he used for traders, neighbors, and anyone else who came to the house with uncertain purpose. The afternoon had begun like so many others in their wooden house. The kettle had already cooled on the kitchen shelf. A thin towel hung over the porch rail. Tuna had just finished rinsing a bowl of rice for Henry's late porridge, and Alex was near the side fence, checking a loose bamboo tie where the climbing beans had begun to lean out too far. Nothing dramatic, just the kind of work that keeps a home from becoming tired. "She is here. What do you need?" The stranger gave a small pause, then said he once knew people connected to Tuna's past. Not close, he added, just connected. He had been passing through the area. He wanted to ask about an old matter. Nothing urgent, nothing urgent. That is what people often say when they know the thing they carry may still hurt. Tuna had heard enough from the basin to stop washing. Her hand stayed in the water a second longer than necessary. Alex did not turn and call her over. He only glanced toward the porch, enough for her to know he had already understood that she was listening. This is one of the quiet protections inside a home. Not every danger enters by force. Sometimes it arrives politely with a low voice and careful words. And the first useful thing is not panic. It is pace. Slow the moment down. Let the house breathe. Let the truth show itself in small pieces. Tuna dried her hands and walked over, not too quickly. Henry saw her moving and followed halfway, then got distracted by a fallen guava leaf. The stranger watched all of that too. When Tuna reached the gate, the color in her face changed just enough for Alex to see it. She knew the name the man mentioned. Not well, not warmly, but enough. Years ago, before this house began to feel like shelter, there had been people around her life who always arrived carrying unfinished business. Some wanted favors, some wanted information, some wanted to remind her that peace was never really hers, only borrowed for a while. The stranger belonged to the edge of that old world, not close enough to claim anything directly, but close enough to disturb the dust over things better left buried. He spoke carefully. Tuna answered carefully. Between them sat all the missing history that children never see and adults never finish explaining. Then Henry did what children do. He looked up, saw too many serious faces, and rejected the whole mood completely. He ran straight to Alex. Not to Tuna, not to the porch, not to his toys, to Alex. He wrapped both arms around Alex's leg, leaned his cheek against him, and said in a bright, easy voice that belonged to a peaceful child, "Dad, can you fix my cartwheel?" The yard went still. Even the sounds around them seemed to step back. The clink of the basin, the rustle of leaves, the hen scratching near the path. For 1 second, everything held its breath around that one word. Dad. Alex did not flinch. Henry was in the yard, talking to himself in that serious little voice children use when they are building a world no one else can see. He moved between a basket, a stick, and 3 smooth stones as if they were important tools. Every few moments he looked up to make sure Alex was still nearby. That was the first thing the stranger noticed. He did not call out loudly. By the end of that day, the papers were still uncertain, the past was still unfinished, and the fence line still needed to be checked. But the house itself felt clearer. Not because every problem had been solved, but because Alex and Tuna understood something they could no longer pretend not to see. Henry had already placed his heart where care had been steady. Sometimes the truth enters a home softly, through a child's voice, in the middle of an uncomfortable moment. And when it does, the real task is not to panic. It is to protect what is good, face what is unfinished, and keep building the kind of peace that can survive being tested. Some boundaries are drawn on paper, some are drawn by love, repeated every day. And in the end, the strongest homes learn to guard both.